Hello, Peter.
Good evening, George.
Okay, I think we should be
We're live
ready.
on YouTube.
Yeah, we should be ready to move in a couple of minutes. How are you, Peter?
Very good, very good. Nice day here in Moscow. A little drizzle, but it cleared up. And we're in a mini, for people that don't know, we're kind of in a mini lockdown. We have been, it'll end on, I think, Tuesday. I don't know what it was supposed to really accomplish. I don't think anything changed. I mean, a week ago, when it was instituted, all of the shopping centers are closed, all the restaurants are closed, all the cafes are closed. Of course, food stores are open. And so I live next to the Spartak Stadium. So I was going to the food store and I noticed police and a lot of kids wearing scarves. And I went into the shop and I said, "Is there a match today?" And they said, "Yes." And I said, "I thought we were in lockdown." So I'm not really sure what that means. Okay? No. Outdoor, I suppose it's fine, okay, but it just really inconveniences a lot of people. Again, middle-class people that have their own businesses.
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
But
it's coming to an end next week.
I think it comes to an end on Tuesday, and then Wednesday everything is back to normal.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I don't know. It's a good question. What is it supposed to accomplish? So that's, but that's generally the case with COVID. Whenever we see, people wearing with these masks and everything. So, okay. Yep. Now, phones off. No texting while zooming.
Oh, I can polish my watches. Okay.
You can polish your watches, exactly. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's a very kind of a bizarre situation, and it's pretty much everywhere because nobody really knows what is going to happen. I mean, it's like, we're heading into the cold season, the influenza season, and there's no one really knows. I mean, what's in store? What the government's going to do? Are they going to go back to those the failed lockdowns? So.
I mean, but I think it's fair to ask a very simple question: is that did it make any impact?
No. Yeah. I don't see it.
I don't know if you can prove it, but I mean, at least through my own personal observations. I mean, I said at the very, very beginning of this, if you're going to get it, you're going to get it, and
well, I think
help you survive it. Okay, yeah. And most people do.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Peter. So let's start. Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and we are live on YouTube. And we do a super chat with all of our friends, and it's always nice to see that the friends of the Gaggle are already here, and it's always nice to see the people who were here last week and the week before, and it's really great to talk to you again. Sorry. Yeah.
Our debut Saturday.
Exactly, it's our debut. Exactly, that's our debut for Saturday. Which I think is a good time for all of us. So it's great. So we have a question from Dr. Lin, who says very kindly, great show yesterday, and talking about the latest Dunham report. Any updates? Well, I don't think there's been any updates that I've seen, but it's something we talked about, which is that it is an extraordinarily damaging indictment, because really, to put it bluntly, it confirms everything we said. There's no Russia in Russiagate. I mean, every single thing that was inserted into all of these fabricated, whether dossiers or claims of pinging in the Trump Tower, all of it was cooked up by Americans aligned with the Clinton campaign. It's kind of what we'd always suspected, but now we really have the convincing proof of this. And particularly troubling, of course, is the role of the FBI in all of this, because, of course, the FBI was in on this from the start. Obama administration in on it from the start. And so here we are. A horrific hoax was perpetrated on the American people.
And it's really interesting, this Igor Danchenko. I mean, he, in a weird way, he gets the last laugh. I mean, you wanted this, I gave it to you. What did you expect?
Right, exactly.
I mean, the guy was going paycheck to paycheck. I mean, the more salacious, the more outrageous. Who knows? Maybe they gave them bonus points. Who knows? The one update I'd like to know is if we could possibly know it. Who's lawyering up? That's what I'd like to know.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's a very good point. But of course, and the person that is the subject of the greatest speculation is the National Security Advisor, Sullivan, because he seems to be at the center of most of this. And you have to believe that if, since the Clinton campaign was involved, then Sullivan, would have been involved. And, and he gave the most oxygen to that whole story of the Trump Tower Alpha Bank connection. So, I would, I'd be lawyering up if I were him.
Check his Twitter feed, everybody.
Exactly.
Check his Twitter feed.
Wouldn't be difficult.
He was one of the worst of the Russiagators.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And for Jake, kind of a beta guy. Let's put it that way, if I can say that. Right. I mean, you want to have your fingers in all of the pies. You want to show how important you are. Right. Oh, you're gonna get burned with this pie, big guy.
Right. No, that's right. I mean, I think that's it. It's an amazing thing. I mean, the Clintons are truly a poisonous couple. I mean, they've been a poison really for decades. I mean, there was and I mean, there was the awfulness of the 90s and everything that they represented. But then they thought, okay, well, Bill Clinton's now gone and we're into a new decade. But then we had this monstrosity of Hillary Clinton, who just wouldn't go away. 20 years later, she's still here. And then it became this ghastliness of this Hillary Clinton, and the fact that she was ready to put the whole world through all of this just in order to become president. Not because she actually wanted to do anything or had any ideas about anything, but she wanted to be president. It's my turn. I deserve to be president. So it really is just the awfulness that the world has had to suffer the Clintons.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's a poison on the body politic. I mean, because the Clinton machine is it's probably diminished in power because, I would like to know, I'd love to be the fly on the wall. I'd really like to know what Susan Rice is saying to Barack Obama, because it looks like to me, the Barack clan is, giving a shove to the Clinton ones. Okay, you did your best. We tolerated you long enough. Now get out of town. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and plus, a question can be raised. Why do the Clintons keep doing it? They got to pay bills. Okay, they made a lot of promises. They took a lot of money.
Yes. No, because after her failure in 2016, the money started drying up because since no one was really expecting her to become president again. So all the money that went into the Clinton Foundation just dried up, which just shows that, all of these, benefactors, these billionaire philanthropists who were contributing amply to the Clinton Foundation, they knew what they were contributing to, not to relieve hunger, pestilence. No, it's to grease the Clinton machine. And so that they immediately, all the money just dried up for the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, and Bill Gates and Epstein took over that mission, didn't they?
That's right. But I really think, what's so awful, and I think we're probably going to talk about this tomorrow, it's so ghastly that there's been no reckoning with the people. And that's why the same crowd are here with the January the 6th hoax. Joe Biden was in the center of that. Biden is in the center of this. So it's like, they're here to perpetrate one hoax after another, demonizing their opponents, feeding off, a kind of violent division within American society, all in order to maintain power for as long as possible.
But you're right, because what it was, and at first it was, you have to go after the Trump orbit, okay, and ruin as many lives as you possibly can, and they did, okay, with the rhetorics of the deplorables, okay. Now they have increased gear, okay. Now we have domestic terrorism, okay. Russiagate and January the narrative, I should say, of January 6th is remarkably similar to Russiagate. I mean, it's a formula, and they know how it works. It just expanded its purview.
That's right. It is a formula. And let's remember, Russiagate, the goal was to destroy the Trump presidency. In some ways, he succeeded with that. But ultimately, the goal was to impeach Trump. And when Mueller's report, turned out to be a dud, they immediately switched over to Ukraine. I mean, within days. I mean, it literally was days. I mean, Mueller made his appearance before Congress. It was an absolutely disastrous performance. And then within days later, Ukraine-gate. So it was always about impeaching him. They knew perfectly well there's no Russia connection with Trump, but they could always get you on lying, he's lying to this, lying to that, and that was always their goal. Okay, once the investigation is underway, you're always going to be able to get somebody for lying. And so, yeah, they moved with that. I mean, they demonized pretty much all the Trump people. Hey, you were treasonous. I mean, you were traitors. You're working with Putin. Then we've got the new treasonous, January the 6th, and then you can add to it the unvaccinated, the white supremacists, and the rest of it. But it's the same formula.
Yeah, I mean, what George and I, we're foreign policy wonks. We've been doing this for a very long time, and so when you think of the readout of the Trump Zelensky call, I mean, for George and I mean, it was like, yeah, hey, Trump talked a lot about himself. Right. That's usual, okay?
Right.
And importantly, everyone, what was the charge? A quid pro quo. Well, as long as there have been readouts, that's what it's always about. Right. It's always about quid pro quo. That's what these conversations are at their core. You do this, and if you don't do this, I'm going to do this to you, and you're going to pay for it, and you're going to remember me forever, and you'll be out of power. Or it's the reverse. Thank you for doing this. We're going to push your agenda up at the United Nations. And anyway, you retire from power, we got a plum job for you. Right. It's called quid pro quo. That's what these all are about. Look at George W. Bush's phone calls. Don't you think those are about quid pro quo, to go to war?
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. The interesting thing was, of course, that Trump had zero interest in turning Ukraine against Russia. That I think was infuriated the whole, the Alexander Vindman's the interagency consensus, because he didn't talk about Russia with Zelensky. He did talk to him about Biden, and what was clearly a legitimate national security interest for the United States, which is what the hell were the Bidens doing in Ukraine during those years?
And why does a sitting vice president want to get rid of what was he, not an investigator? What was it?
He was the kind of the attorney, not the attorney general or whatever, the
general prosecutor.
Special prosecutor.
So why does sitting vice president of the United States want to get rid of a general prosecutor in a foreign country? Can anyone explain that?
That's exactly, exactly. Again, the media kind of deliberately didn't want to go into that, and said, no connection at all with Burisma, no connection at all with his son. Well, so why did he insist on this? Why does he go to Kiev and absolutely makes a condition of for the release of U.S. funds that you fire this guy? I mean, why? Why do that? I mean, if you just wanted because he was so concerned with corruption. Why? Since when has Biden never been concerned?
Well, he was concerned about corruption, his own family corruption. Okay, right. I mean, to keep the parallel going, Ashley Babbitt. And she was, she could have been like Terminator and taken out half of Congress. A woman that's 5'2", 98 pounds. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And when she was shot, because I don't know, did you watch the Tucker Carlson thing that I sent you?
Did you send me something?
I sent you the first part of his Patriots documentary.
I saw the I mean, I saw the whatever they call it, the trailer, the 4-minute trailer.
I sent you the link for the first part. Okay, it is brilliant. Okay,
Oh, okay.
I just checked. I sent it.
I don't have it. I don't know. I don't know if someone.
Well, I mean, I'm a little.
I look again in my email box, but
I'm a little worried that it might. This is obviously a bootleg somebody put on. Okay, so maybe YouTube is going to take it off even today. Okay, because it was put up yet last night. I watched the first part. The point is that the media doesn't ask any of these. Why is the sitting vice president getting rid of a general prosecutor in a foreign country? Why isn't there an public investigation into how Ashley Babbitt died and why? They see, the problem is, everyone, is that it's always the issue of omission. It's omission. They just don't talk about things.
I think it's right. And what's interesting, really, to talk about Ashley Babbitt and the parallelism with Russiagate, which is that the real criminals are getting away with it. I mean, in other words, just like in Russiagate, who are the real criminals? James Comey, at the heart of it, everything was Comey. Peter Strzok, Brennan, Page. These people were clearly committing crimes. They were fabricating evidence. I mean, they were engaged. Nothing has happened to them. The others are paid a price. Flynn, Roger Stone, Papadopoulos, a number of people who have gone through this awful DOJ
and reputations destroyed. And reputation.
Exactly. I mean, Michael Flynn, the guy was a 3-star general. Imagine he had devoted his entire career to military service. He'd risen to the rank of 3-star general. He was the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. His entire reputation was destroyed. And not to mention however much money all this took from him. These people paid a price. The true criminals got away with it. And the January the 6th again, when Ashley Babbitt is killed, a real crime was committed. This guy, what's his name again?
Byrd.
Byrd, exactly. Michael Byrd, who shot her. That's a real crime. He shoots an unarmed woman without any warning. But he's getting away with it while all these people who, many of whom didn't even enter the Capitol building, they're still rotting in this horrific DC jail. So again, there's a parallelism as to the real criminals are kind of are getting away with it, and the innocent people are just getting caught up in the system.
Well, this officer Byrd, he broke so many codes for an officer discharging a weapon. I learned today from that documentary that Tucker made, he ran away. After he shot her, he ran away. He ran from the scene. Now, any officer, any officer that discharges his weapon intentionally against an individual must give aid. Must. It's part of their training.
Yeah.
And it was the other rioters. They carried her body down the flight of stairs, face down, like an animal, like a dog.
That's right. Yeah. And there's another one that because another woman was killed, and again, it was immediately said, oh, she died of a drug overdose. But it's clear that it was a lot more to it than that. She was also beaten quite heavily by police. So drug overdose. But she was beaten heavily, and then she died. So it may be that the Capitol Police are responsible for the death of 2 unarmed women on January the 6th. So anyway, we've got a super chat from Detroit Rock City. It's a good friend of ours. It says the U.S. public will not be silent. Blowback coming. Well, it may be right. I think January the 6th was in a sense a kind of a blowback. I mean, I think that there was so much frustration, rage on the part of Trump supporters for everything that had happened during the 4 years of the Trump administration, the unfairness of this persecution, and then compounded by the absolute stone cold refusal of the courts to entertain the the lawsuits that had been filed, not just by the Trump people, but by the attorney generals. I mean, when 18 attorney generals would file the suit, the Supreme Court challenging the election results, and the Supreme Court, oh, we're not bothering with this. I think there's a lot of pent-up frustration. And I think if the Democrats do keep going down this path of January the 6th, I mean, I do think that the frustration is just going to grow. I mean, it's like, we keep doing this, have election after election, and our will is being stymied.
What's really scary about that? It's a good question, and I think it's a good observation. That is, it appears now, as we piece it together, is that obviously the authorities, particularly the DOJ, the FBI, knew that the people were going to show, a lot of people were going to show their frustration, but there was no indication it was going to be violent, okay? I mean, these are a bunch of late boomers, folks, okay? I mean, a lot of late boomers, okay? Right. A lot of poor people, a lot of people in debt, a lot of people having a lot of problems. And of course, that amplifies their frustration with what they perceived was something that was unjust, okay? It's not illegal to believe something's unjust, okay? At least not yet, okay? But my point is that the people in the DOJ, and particularly the Democratic Party, realize this could be a photo op that they don't want to go well. Okay, so what we're going to do is they're going to blemish it, destroy it, and so they preempted it. So what my point is here is that people are good. It's certainly a chilling effect here, but that doesn't. People's problems don't go away just because they're chilled. Okay, so I think that the pressure is building. It's a lot of pressure out there, and if you want to continue to berate and ignore these people, you do it at your peril.
Right. But no, I think so. And I think that there's also the problem about elections. I mean, if we're going to go through these things of having stolen elections. I mean, here's this election in New Jersey with that, the truck driver who won that against the race against the Senate president in New Jersey. They keep finding new votes. Today there's this, oh, we found some more votes. I mean, it's you can't invent it. I mean, this is New Jersey. This is Tony Soprano country, and it's like, oh, look, in the cold storage, where there's all sorts of meat hanging, and we found another 10,000 votes or whatever. So if you're going to go down this path, then ultimately it is the sort of the Ukraine model, which is we keep voting for a guy, and he wins elections, and then somehow the election is overturned. Once suddenly the courts step in, oh, fraud, and now, oh well, we'll have a riot in the street, and then apparently a riot can just simply bring a government out of power. So people just get fed up. We're not putting up with this anymore, and I think something like this could happen in America.
Definitely. Okay. I mean, the way I look at it is that going into the November 2016, a lot of people have the following: we keep voting, but nothing changes. Yes. Okay. People promise us, but we don't, no promises are kept. Right. And you know what? In the meantime, we're getting poorer and poorer and poorer. There's addiction all around us. There's the unfettered drug use. The border, at least under Trump, it was much more under control. But, again, pouring in changing of local communities very quickly, which seems to be intentional. And then people just, they have this perception, there's only one thing I got left. It's the vote. That's the only thing I have left. And they're trying to take that away from me too. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I agree. There's a question from Herman Montoya. He says, why won't Trump supporters talk about the Capitol Police shot, the shooting by the Capitol Police of Ashley Babbitt? Well, you have to say, though, that, I think the Trump supporters do talk about it. I think you mean Republicans. The Republicans on the Hill don't talk about it because they are pusillanimous. I mean, they've been cowed and beaten into the ground by Democrats. They're cowed and beaten into the ground by the mainstream media, and they're afraid. They're afraid of sticking their heads above the parapet. I mean, it's not just Ashley Babbitt, but on all sorts of stuff. They are terrified of sticking their necks out.
Do you think the Republican leadership, McCarthy and Schumer, what's his name, the Republican head of the Senate,
McConnell.
McConnell. Do you think any of them give a rat's ass about someone like Ashley Babbitt? They're not donors.
They're not donors.
They're not donors.
That's right.
They're just a nuisance. They hold their nose. They hold their nose when they're around people like that. They don't want to. See, they have just as much contempt as the Democrats do. They just don't say it openly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly. It's just that they need their votes because for some reason, you know, we're wedded to the system where we have elections, and in elections, every vote counts, and every vote is equal. So every individual has the vote. So they have to, come election time, they have to wheel out all these conservative slogans and pretend to be conservative. I'm a conservative. I am. What was that? Mitt Romney said, I'm fiercely conservative. You know, they all just keep repeating, I'm a Ronald Reagan conservative. I'm a Ronald Reagan Republican. God damn it. Then they do this. And then as soon as the election is over, you know.
Capitalist, you.
Yeah, that's what happens. And you know, they're ultimately, they are terrified of taking on any issues that the media are going to come at them with real fury. And the January the 6th and Ashley Babbitt, Trump, the media will just go absolutely crazy, and they're afraid, they're frightened. I mean, the world has more cowards than brave people. Brave people are very, you know, the few and far between. So they're afraid. So, you know, they think, what can I talk about safely? Oh, I can talk about tax cuts. Oh, let me talk about tax cuts. You know, because it's safe. Okay, no one cares about that. So yeah, sure, keep talking about tax cuts. And how we're going to take on Putin. And I don't know whether you saw, you know, the Republicans are now banging the drum about Ukraine. You know, it was Tom Cotton. I think, you know, he wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal. I've seen it because it's behind a paywall. But he wrote an article, I think, yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. Biden is another foreign policy failure for Biden. He's doing nothing about Putin's threats to Ukraine. And then the other one, that little guy, little Marco Rubio, he's also droning on about Ukraine. So that's it. You know, Republicans seizing defeat from the jaws of victory. Let's go fight Putin. Yeah, that's a surefire winner.
And we had three presidential election cycles in a row, and the anti-war sentiment is very, very real. Again, you know, you vote for these people, but you don't get the policy change. Okay, right. Tom Cotton and Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham, they're all awful people. They're not your friend. Okay, they're not your friend. They don't stand up for you. Oh, okay, we'll stand up for, you know, some. You know, what was it? Dr. Seuss. You know, they'll go to the floor for Dr. Seuss. It seems they're going to clean your clock. They're going to pickpocket you when they're talking about Dr. Seuss. Don't be fooled by this, okay? Because Republicans never talk about structural change, which we need, or everything's going to collapse in every single way.
Right. No, that's right. Dr. Lin has very generously contributed to us. Thank you very much for Dr. Lin and your kind words. So we have Joe Cool, who says Putin has been leader since 1999, and the constitution has been amended to extend his rule in the future. What makes you think Russian votes actually reflect reality? Okay, Peter, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you look at the times that he's run for office, he's won overwhelmingly. He did leave office in 2008. Okay, he had a super majority in the parliament. He could have snapped his fingers and had United Russia amend the constitution for him. He had a super majority, but he didn't do it. Okay, I mean, I take a very counterintuitive look at this. You know, Putin wants to cling to power. It's actually just the opposite. It's very difficult for him to leave, okay, because of the trajectory that he's put on the country, and people want that stability. I can't overemphasize to everyone how important stability is to the Russian body politic. That is the most important thing. They want stability. This country the 20th century and going into the entire 20th century was basically a wash for Russia. Okay, they don't want any more of it. They're tired of it. Yep. They want prosperity. They want to be left alone. They want to bring up their children. Okay, that's their top priorities. And they don't, and for politics to this day, because of the 1990s, it's just a dirty word. People don't want that. Now, if the government, your city government, the federal government doesn't match up to your demands, people protest, and they know it. They feel it. Okay, they have to adjust. Okay, the last time Putin's State of the what we would call the State of the Union address, it was about infrastructure, a lot more infrastructure, and 3 paragraphs on foreign policy.
Right. No, I think that's right. And I think that it was always Putin's program ever since he came to power in 1999, which was to make Russia into a major economic power. I mean, I think that's always been his agenda. So people keep saying, oh, he wants to restore Soviet primacy in the world. There's no evidence of that. He has never talked about that. He doesn't ever talk about that. He talks a great deal about domestic issues, about economic policy, and his agenda has always been getting investment, Western investment, particularly German investment, in order to get the Russian economy up and running. That, I mean, it says reasonably that, why isn't Russia punching its weight? I mean, it should be a major economic power alongside Germany and Japan. And that was always his agenda. And how many times can he go on saying that, we may regret the demise of the Soviet Union, but it's not coming back. I mean, he said that, I think he said something like, if you don't miss the Soviet Union, you have no heart. But if you think the Soviet Union can be restored, you have no brain. I mean, so, he said this many times.
And also, it's one of these ridiculous quotes that are just so out of context. The demise of the Soviet Union was the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. But if you continue in the paragraph, it was a catastrophe for millions of ethnic Russians that were on the other side of the border. Exactly. And it's still a problem to this day. We look at the Donbass, okay? Yeah. I mean, during the Soviet Union, if you were Russian in the Donbass, it didn't matter if you were in Ukraine or not. You were in the Soviet Union, okay? Okay. Look at all of the Russians that are in the Baltic states, okay? And the great EU, the rules-based order, they're still treated as second-class citizens, okay? And then you have all through the southern underbelly, you had Russians that were on the other side of the border. And then look, for example, Gamsakhurdi, the rabid Georgian nationalist, I mean, Russians have had to deal with this, okay, because they never thought the Soviet Union was going to end, okay, and they've had to alleviate it. As a matter of fact, in the time that I have lived in this country, they have slowly, very slowly, reformed the immigration system so people can actually come back. I mean, I knew many Russians from the Baltic states. I'm Russian. I don't even speak Lithuanian. And I have to get a visa to the Russian Federation. Very frustrating.
And what is, I think, is quite shocking that, the Soviet Union broke up into the 15 republics. Of the 15 republics, only Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Russia have Russian as an official language, even though Russia was the lingua franca, the official language throughout the Soviet Union. Even the minimum these countries haven't done, which is to make Russia not the official language, an official language. That's all, an official language, and they haven't done it, with the exception of Kazakhstan and Belarus.
And in Kazakhstan, they're going to Latin letters, abandoning Cyrillic letters. Okay, I mean, this whole this is just this is just for the military-industrial complex, for the intelligence community. This is threat inflation. Okay, if you were to ask the average Russian, would you like the Soviet Union back, and they'd say, most people say, well, what do you mean by that? Like, we subsidize all the other republics again? Nope. We are not interested in that. We're not interested in subsidizing the Ukrainian and the Georgian and Lithuanian economy. No way, not again. We were poor. They were richer than we were.
Right. Well, I think that's right. But I mean, I think that, I think Russians do look back nostalgically, I think, on the time when they were a great power. I mean, there was no question. I mean, the USSR was, it frightened the world. I mean, I think it gives you a certain sense of importance. I mean, just like Americans, I mean, it gives Americans, a sense of importance. Hey, we're the greatest power in the world. And I think that there is a nostalgia for the USSR, but it's gone. I mean, the decisions were made 30 years ago, and you can't restore it. So therefore,
well, but at the same time, nobody is, fondly thinking, wouldn't it be great if the Communist Party ran the country? No, nobody thinks that. No, I mean, maybe members of the Russian Communist Party think that, but most people would not want that whatsoever. You can leave this country. You can earn money. You can spend the money the way you want. You can say whatever you want. Russians are freer and more affluent than they have ever been in their entire existence, their entire history. And people know that. Million Russians love to travel. They go abroad, they see some good stuff, some bad stuff, and then they come home and say, in London, they got these really great steak restaurants. Why don't we have that? Then they have it, okay? Right. Service was awful. Now service is better because there's a demonstration effect. But there's, the homelessness in San Francisco smells like urine. No, we don't want that in our cities. Okay. So, I mean, it's best practices here. I mean, no one is required to stay.
Right. Well, mind you, I mean, it's not that easy for Russians to get visas to travel elsewhere. I mean, particularly with COVID, but that was like, let's say you're a Russian and you want to go visit the United States, it's by no means an easy task to get a visa. So, but yeah, that's it. I mean, nobody wants.
That's not Russia's fault.
No, that's not Russia's fault. No, that's definitely not. But you're right. I think that that I think there's no one who wants the communists back. So it's like they say, okay, Gorbachev, he made a lot of foolish decisions. He kind of tossed it all away. There was a country. He inherited a state. He tossed it away, but. No one says, well, okay, well, let's go back to 1989 because that's, it just cannot happen. So, that's it. You have to sort of work with what you have.
Yeah, I mean, George brings up such a good point. It's outsiders that are musing about Russia that think about that question. When you live here on a day-to-day basis, this doesn't come to mind. I mean, as a trained historian, and I know Russian history and Soviet history quite well. I mean, I see statues, and there's still a statue of some big statues to Lenin, and it's kind of like ho-hum. And then you go to the foreign ministry, which is a really impressive building, okay? And it has a hammer and sickle insignia still. And, for me, what they're doing is saying this, we're acknowledging our history, okay? Right. We're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's bad, we're saying this is what it was. It was on here when it started, and there's no reason for us to take
that's, I think, a very interesting point, because I remember, I think it was Anne Applebaum, a number of these women, there's Anne Applebaum and Julia Ioffe, I kind of get them kind of confused in my mind. I think it was Anne Applebaum. Yeah, who wrote precisely about that. Well, the Russians haven't taken down the statues, and there's a parallelism between Americans who are still not taking down the Confederate statues, still have Robert E. Lee, just as the Russians still have statues of Lenin, and in some places they still have statues of Stalin. But the point is that I think it's right, you keep your statues because it is part of your history. I mean, the Confederacy, the Civil War, the antebellum South and everything, it's a part of history. And what the Americans did after the Civil War to bring about reconciliation between North and South, I mean, that is a part of American history. I mean, it was a deliberate policy to bring about reconciliation. What are you supposed to do? Just go on trampling your foes into the ground? So the same way that the Russians say, well, this is a part of history. Leninism, Stalin. I mean, this is it's part of it. It's a very significant part of our history.
Yeah, and if anything, it's a learning experience. I mean, George and I have reiterated this so many times on the Gaggle, but the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War, is such a crucible for generations of Russians and former nationalities of the Soviet Union. And so to desecrate some of these statues would desecrate that that very heroic experience. And that is something that's unconscionable.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, again, Anne Applebaum and all the rest of you, do you ever mention that under Putin, that the white generals of the Civil War have been rehabilitated in the sense they had a cause and they fought for it. They lost, but they had a cause. They believed in Russia. They loved Russia.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it's much more neutral that way. He was that general was a very important guy. Okay. Right. You can't acknowledge it. And this is something that we've seen in Russia over the last 20 years, is trying to even everything out. Right. And it's not trying to fuse them together. You can't. Right. But they're saying these are things that exist at the same time, and it's called history, and it's putting it into context.
Well, I think that's exactly right. And, you basically, I mean, the Soviet experience is a very complex one. And and Putin doesn't give any particular interpretation himself. He just says, look, I mean, it is what it is. You make of it what you want to make of it, but keep in mind that we had the industrialization, however terrible it was. It did create a war machine that was able to withstand the Wehrmacht, and we did have a leader, terrible leader, Stalin in many ways. But, and Putin has said this, it may be that only he, it's only somebody as ruthless as he was could have held the country together at that horrific moment in June 1941, and that's no one's defending him. But said that maybe it's just somebody who's as a monster and as ruthless as he was, who could have achieved what he did achieve then.
I think it was Robert Service. I had the great privilege of having him on Crosstalk, and he was a preeminent Western historian of the Soviet economy. And we on my program, he even admitted, and he's no fan of Stalin, and he said, it was because of the economic system that Stalin had created in the 1930s that allowed the Soviet Union to be victorious over Nazi Germany. And here's the historian that doesn't have a dog in the game. He's just saying that's the way it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. And so that's why he says, look, it's part of the Soviet experience, just as much as the Gulag and the mass executions and the purges, and the fact that just about every family suffered from purges of Stalin. It's part of our history, and so you just make of it what you will. It's not up to me to explain what the meaning of Russian and Soviet history. It's up to all Russians to understand what happened.
And nothing stops a Russian citizen from going into the archives, finding about what happened to their family, and writing about it, publicizing it, going online. You can do all of that you want. You can castigate as much as you want the Soviet rule. You can do it all you want. You just can't insult veterans.
Yes,
can't go there. Can't go.
That's right. That's right. So we have a very generous contribution from Spectre in the Air. He says, hello, gentlemen. I subscribe to you on Locals and enjoy your work. Thank you. I've learned a lot. Kind regards, John Z. So thank you very much, John Z. Much appreciated. We very much appreciate all of our friends and contributors. It's a lot of pleasure and so on. And so anyway, we also have now a super chat from Ryan McDonald. Ryan's a good friend of ours. It says, did the congressional Republicans in blue states make a mistake in voting yes for the bipartisan spending bill in the dead of night last night? Well, I tend to think that yes. I mean, because ultimately, you've got Biden on the ropes, and when you have your adversary on the ropes, you basically move in for the kill. I mean, Biden. Here's this administration. It's a dreadful, ghastly administration. When you list all the things that it's done, it's quite appalling. They're your political adversaries. I mean, I think that they're not going to cut you any slack. So why cut them any slack? This is the time to basically just move in for the kill. And so I think that giving Biden a success after he had just had this terrible drubbing in Virginia and largely in New Jersey, it just baffles me, and it just is so typical of Republicans, again, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, because now the media are already singing, oh, great victory for Biden, the solid visionary, he pushed for this bipartisan infrastructure bill, he's pulled it off, what a great victory. So, again, thank you, Republicans, for basically just, letting him off the hook.
Well, it went from about 10 trillion down to 6 trillion, down to 3 trillion. Okay, I mean, look, first of all, I would strongly put into question this is a victory. I don't think anybody's going to really give a hoot one way or another. Is inflation going to change tomorrow, George? Is it going to stop caravans, George? Is it going to fix supply chains, George? Is it addressing the opiate crisis, George? No, yeah. Nicole Wallace can say all she wants, okay, but who cares, okay? It's not, if you're a voter or an average citizen dealing with these ridiculous mandates and all that, you think they give a hoot, about Biden's agenda? Okay, I mean, clearly they're not part of his agenda, okay? So why would they even care about it one way or another? As what's his name? Our good friend. Well, he said the job of Congress is to spend money. Okay, I mean, so Douglas McGregor said that. Okay, that's their job. Okay, if you look at the bills, and I can see why progressives would be disappointed. But if at the end of the day, it's business that won. It's their business friends won. Okay, so it's a Pyrrhic victory in that sense too. Just because you say it's a victory doesn't mean anything. And I would say, I would very strongly ask, does anybody know what's in the bill?
No, nobody does. And that's the wonderful thing about these bills is that once they get passed, then the media hail them as great triumphs and so on. But they have no idea. There's 2,000 pages. No one in the world has gone through those 2,000 pages. But everyone's ready to say, oh, this is the greatest bill since FDR and whatever. So yeah, I mean, no one does. And of course now they're going to move for the Build Back Better bill. I imagine they're going to pass something. I mean, it'd be hard to believe that they're not going to be able to agree on to pass something. I mean, Joe Manchin is going to hold out for more and more, but eventually he's going to have to say yes to something. I mean, he can't just keep saying no. So they'll pass something. But again, I mean, it's a boondoggle. The real question with these bills is what's hidden in them, which nobody really knows about, because they like to stuff these all sorts of things like amnesty for illegals. They stuff it into their into the bill, which nobody really knows about, because they say, oh, we got to put extra money for processing immigrants, and so basically it's just an amnesty. So they're obviously trying to stuff all kinds of things in there, and that's going to be the real challenge. Get rid of all the garbage.
Or getting rid of the salt tax. I mean, this is just such an insult. Okay,
right.
When you tally up how much it's cost, and then when you get rid of the salt tax, you just enrich the richest people on the planet, and you increase the deficit. I mean, this is such an insult. And like I said, people, election cycle after election cycle, are demanding change, and they always get the same.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, the problem with those, with the kind of the progressives, is that they follow an agenda that is very, very unpopular. So they pretend to be, well, we're for the people. But how can you be for the people if you believe in open borders? I mean, it's an obvious contradiction. I mean, at least Bernie Sanders about 12, 13 years ago said open borders is an idea cooked up by the Kochs, because he at least understood then that cheap labor is exactly what the corporations have been thirsting for in the United States for years. The people come in and they just undercut unions, they undercut proper pay in the United States, and that's why they love it. And it goes together, of course, with the progressive. So long as the progressives keep promising, oh, we'll have some kind of a big welfare state in the United States and open borders. Well, you have to be a bloody idiot not to realize, well, there's a bit of a contradiction. You have a nice, generous welfare state. The whole bloody world is going to come through the border. Hey, you got free schooling, free housing, everything. I'm going to get a job, which is much better paid than what I have at home. Of course, everyone's going to come in through the open border.
Yeah, but see, my argument with these people here is like subsidizing pre-K schooling. I don't have a problem with that, but what are you going to teach? See, that's what I want to know.
Well, I mean,
okay?
I agree, but you can't. Yeah, but you can't have. Ultimately, you can't have any socialist system if you have an open border. I mean, that's I mean, that's just a given.
You didn't let me finish.
Go on.
You didn't let me finish.
All right, okay.
You didn't let me finish.
Okay.
Having like community college, again, I'm not against that, but particularly if it was like vocational school, where you learn a skill. But again, what is the content of the education? If it's just wokeism, no. And then, sorry, you preempted me, but I'm still going to say it. But illegals, no way, no chance in hell for me, none, zero. Okay,
right.
Because that is one of the privileges you get by being a citizen. Okay, you can't give all these privileges to anyone that crosses the border. Okay, right. That's insanity.
Right. No, it is, and that's why. I mean, it only makes sense. You can only have socialism in one country. You can't have a socialism for the rest of the world. I mean, that's just lunacy. I mean, then basically, what American taxpayers are on the hook to subsidize the whole world. I mean, that's just a non-starter. So yeah, and Herman Montoya again says something that we both agree with, which is corporations love cheap labor all over the world, no matter what countries you live in. It's a wonderful kind of an alliance between giant corporations and the sort of progressive woke left, and their agenda, I think, is that roughly speaking, let's say, well, if you're not white, if you're not Western, if you're not European, you must be a good guy. I mean, that's just roughly it. So if you're coming in from somewhere else and you're not white, European, Christian, we love you because you're great. You're obviously a much superior person than we are. I mean, I think that there's some deeper psychological kind of self-hate that underlies that pro-immigrant fantasy, which is not motivated by cheap labor, as in the AOCs and all the rest of them.
This weird white man's burden thing is so strange in this progressive strain. Okay, I've never understood that. I mean, I've always had, well, not always, but I've always been appreciative of some progressive ideas because they used to talk about helping the working class. Okay. But if you're going to dilute the working class with so many other unskilled workers and all that, I just can't see how you can make that argument. Just like you said, Bernie Sanders said that 2 decades ago,
right? And
how he got to the place where he is now. I mean, this is the displacement theory. This is what it gets down to. So I mean, you can be, it's white man's burden, but basically it's displacement. Okay, we just need to change the demographic.
Right,
okay?
Exactly. That's it. And I think there is that deep hatred for, I think, America, and that's why I think when Biden expresses himself with this hatred, and Clinton as well, about the deplorables, about the Trump supporters, the white supremacists, the white nationalists, the racists, the KKK, the unvaccinated. That's kind of how they look upon Americans, particularly white Americans, and they say, yeah, they should be displaced. They should be replaced by people who are obviously more virtuous than they are. They come from Asia and Africa. They must, by definition, be better than homegrown Americans. I think that's their ideology, but it goes very nicely together with their financial interest. I mean, Soros, in the case of someone like George Soros, I mean, he has both. I mean, he embraces a woke ideology and he makes money from it. So it's a happy marriage. He can feel good about himself and he can pocket some money.
Yeah, I mean, this again. This is this media narrative that's kind of a very simplistic binary. You know, all of these people coming in from Latin America and Africa and all around, they're by definition not Trump supporters. Well, how do you know that? Okay,
Right.
a lot of these people are very conservative. Okay, but see, that's the world.
Yeah, no, we talked about this before, but they may be conservative. They're not going to be Trump supporters because they have conservative family values, but you know, if it comes to government services, you know, they you know, that's going to be a more important part of their.
We've already agreed.
We
on
talked
this.
about that. So
about a worldview. I'm not
right.
saying that doesn't having welfare benefits cannot trump ideology. Sure, but it doesn't negate the ideology. That's why they don't want Cubans. Okay, for example.
Right. That's exactly, because with Cubans and Venezuelans, I mean, they have a particular animus towards you know, towards socialism, communism, government, and so on. So that they you know, they're clearly against that. But the problem arises is that, you know, people can have conservative values. I mean, look at, you know, with blacks. I mean, blacks, you know, they have conservative values. I mean, they, often much more conservative. I mean, like, for instance, the tolerance of homosexuality. I mean, with blacks is much smaller than with whites. But nonetheless, they vote absolutely as a bloc for the Democrats. I mean, because they vote, you know,
much to their disadvantage.
Right.
I would say.
Yeah. That's right. So
doesn't work for him. How does it work? You know,
right.
How does it work for you when these democratic cities that have been run into the ground, no infrastructure, high crime, a lot of drugs and all that, and you know, it's still the Democratic Party that knows best for you. This is one of the things that I really truly hope will fundamentally start changing. But I mean, you're right, George. I mean, if you have a lock on, you know, welfare payments, food stamps, and all of that, it's hard to say no. Particularly when it's generational. It's generational.
That's right. Exactly. And as Balash Hetini, who's a good friend of ours, always here, he says that I think the people who were impoverished in the last decades were mostly white middle class. I think that's right. And I think that the statistics that show that where is life expectancy in decline, it is among white men. It's not among African Americans. It's white men whose life expectancy is in decline, and among whom suicide is on the rise, and drug addiction, and so on. So it's absolutely right. I mean, those are people who have been hit the hardest. So they've been hit by an economy, you know, all the deindustrialization and offshoring and everything. They've been hit by that, but they've also been hit by an economy that if you're a white man, you just don't get a job. I mean, it's like, you know, you just, no one really wants you, you know, because there's preferential hiring and so on. So, you're out of it. And so therefore, and they feel that they you know, it becomes a part of your self-identity, is that you're surplus, you know, nobody really wants you.
And it becomes cyclical, because with the decline of males at university, in graduate schools, things like that, when it hits a certain tipping point where then, you know, you don't even contemplate. I mean, why would I do that? We don't do that. Okay. Stay home, watch Netflix, and cover yourself with pedo dust. Okay.
Right. That's right.
And that's what you do. That's what we do. Okay.
That's right. I mean, look at, if you look at these Ivy League schools, not that they provide a particularly outstanding education, but there is a big snob appeal. I mean, you get an MBA from Harvard, or you get a degree from Harvard Law School, even though Lawrence Tribe and terrible people teach there. But the point is that your chances of getting into Harvard are very slim, because they have the minority set-asides, and then they have the set-asides for the alumni, and then they have the set-asides for the donors, the people who give very generously to their alma mater. You're some poor white kid from Dayton, Ohio. You have no chance of getting into Harvard. I mean, you may have the best grades, you may do really well in your LSAT standardized test. You have very, very little chance of getting into any of these Ivy League schools. And if you don't get into these schools, your chance of getting into one of the big law firms and all get those fancy jobs, the prestigious jobs, again, virtually nil.
And that's why white kids lie about their ethnicity.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that race virgin Kendi, he really got it served up to him, didn't he? Okay. I mean, your ridiculous ideology. You did a self-goal, dude. You did it. You self-goaled yourself. I
Right.
mean, what a humiliating thing to go through.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, we did a podcast on that earlier in the week, and that's the thing. He rushed out that tweet because he wanted to show what swine white people are. Look at what absolute bastards. They want to pretend to be blacks. Just to get into college. And say, yeah, they basically said, yeah, I have no chance of getting in if I say I'm a Caucasian. I might have a chance if I lie and say that I'm a minority. And what that finding showed, it worked. That lie worked for them. So the ones who lied, they say a big chunk of them actually succeeded in getting in. They wouldn't have got in otherwise.
Yeah, and I really like the Native American ones. Pocahontas there, she really is a trailblazer. Just say you're Native American. That's pretty, and because they were Native American, no records, and my grandfather. Okay, fine. I mean, what was the soup that she came up with?
Oh yeah. I know that. Yeah. There was a soup. But there was also some kind of an omelet. Remember, there was an omelet. The crab.
Pow wow chow.
That's it. Yeah, there was a special omelet that they made. Wow.
But do you think that any? I'm sorry, I could be completely mistaken here. But do you think any Native American would name a food pow wow chow? I mean, it seems like appropriation to me, doesn't it? I mean, let me give you an example that hardly anybody knows. When you go to Russian churches, on the top, Westerners always say they're onion domes. They say onion dome. No one in Russia says that. They're not onions. They're a flame.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, but see, this is how you appropriate it in the most egregious way. No, those are onion domes. No, they're not. That's what Westerners see. That when someone says it's an onion dome, they don't know anything about Russia. Okay, right. They don't. Nobody says that.
Of course not. No, okay.
Pow wow chow is just as fake as Elizabeth Warren.
Exactly. And of course, Elizabeth Warren, she made a strategic decision. How do I get a job at Harvard? So I'll tell them I was a minority. It was a very, very calculated move by her. Then she kind of made all that nonsense about what her grandpappy used to say around the kitchen table. And that's what he said. No one really believed it. In any case, grandpappy was long dead, so we can't really check whether grandpappy or grandmammy actually ever said any of those things. But yeah, that's how you get a job. It's a very, very depressing state of affairs, but I think it's something that is reflected all down throughout American society within the education system. We talk about why boys, white boys doing so poorly. They're doing very poorly, relative to white girls. And because the education system just ignores their needs. I mean, it's like it creates, I think, in many ways, a very feminine sort of culture within the schools in which boys don't thrive. I think, all the various aspects of boyhood, kind of natural aggressiveness and, assertiveness and competitiveness, all of that is frowned upon. And what happens then? Well, boys don't thrive in that atmosphere. I mean, it's an atmosphere in which girls thrive, but boys don't. But nonetheless, and I think we talked about this before, the Biden people, they're so blinded by ideology, they're still obsessed. Oh, girls, we have to deal with girls because schools are discriminating against girls and girls are not doing well. And, no one really cares about girls in school. Or despite all the fact that the statistics show that the overwhelming majority of graduates in universities are young women. And then girls do regularly better than boys in standardized tests.
I think it was right before the pandemic hit. There was this, girls sports, I mean, like semi-professional, they're paid less than the guys. And then, the people that actually do the research dig deep and they, the American soccer team, the women's soccer team was making more money than the guys. Okay. They had more sponsors and everything else. I mean, people make these statements. Okay. is that what we want as a society? Is not to have men in public? I mean, is that really where we want to go?
Right.
Okay. I mean, do you think women like these kinds of men that are being generated, being created? Women don't like men like that.
I don't think so. I really don't think so at all. But they don't have any say in it. I mean, it's not like girls going to school and and they say, well, this is the kind of school that I want. This is the sort of the curriculum I want. It's a decision that has been made for them. And so therefore, you were in school. I mean, let's say when I taught briefly in the New York City public schools, the girls knew that they had the rule of the roost. They could do anything. No one ever touched them. The boys just sort of sulked off. They just sat in the corner doing whatever that they were doing. But the girls, you don't want to mess with them because they know they rule the roost. And if you in any way say something that they don't like, boom, they go straight to the principal to complain, or human resources. The whole gigantic human resources apparat in these schools. And if they think the teacher dissed them, they're dissed, you're disrespecting them, boom, they're off to complain because they know they are the top dog. The boys just simply, they sit there, no one pays any attention to them. They don't pay any attention to anyone else. So they just goof off because ultimately they don't matter very much.
Yeah, well, that is one path to ending of civilization. That's all I can say. Okay, it's really so. It's foreboding to say, but I will say it, and I've been saying it all along. All lives matter. Okay, yes. And when you choose, when you're making, lives matter, but specifically, I mean, some animals are what it was Orwell.
Some animals are more equal than others.
That's what we get.
Yeah, no, that's right. It really is this kind of a we have a situation in which people have been writing about this for several decades. I mean, the number of writers about why are boys underachieving, and nonetheless the ideologues within the Biden administration, within the education department, they pay no attention to all this. They just simply go on repeating their ridiculous ideological slogans.
Well,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, but I mean, to make matters even worse is that the men that quote unquote make it to the top are very often completely incompetent because they come from money. They come from the social circle.
Right.
I mean, it's like gentleman sees doesn't matter, and they're vaulted to the top. I mean, look at Pete Buttigieg. What the hell is this guy up to? I mean, and he's just as cool as a cucumber.
Right,
I'm untouchable. I'm untouchable.
Yeah, that's right.
Mackenzie, I'm gay.
Right,
I'm cool.
Right.
This is where it drives to. I mean, Kamala Harris, a completely incompetent person. I wouldn't let her be head of a crosswalk in front of a school. I mean, I wouldn't trust her to do that. And she's vice president a heartbeat away.
That's right. And the funny thing is that it's something that's happened fairly quick. Look, within the last few years. I mean, look at this guy, Herschel Walker, footballer, kind of a very manly guy. And then you remember they had his son was on, I think she was on Laura Ingraham. And he's just like any other kind of somewhat effete, effeminate Californian. You think, really, that's your father? I mean, it's like, that's it. And even there was an interview with David Chase, the creator of The Sopranos, and he was talking about how they decided to cast James Gandolfini's son as the young Tony Soprano in this new movie, The Sopranos prequel movie. And he said, well, the boy really isn't at all like a tough guy like his father is. So yeah, you could say that. I mean, he's not at all like Gandolfini. I mean, in other words, Gandolfini, the actor himself was kind of a tough guy.
He was an alpha male.
Exactly, not just so he was a good fit for Tony Soprano. But it's something that's happened, relatively recent, just like within one generation. It's like, whoa, where did that come from? So.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting is that some of the stuff I watch on Netflix. You're absolutely right. the dialogue for male characters is extremely effeminate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
It's I find it very striking. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. It's an observation. Okay, and just that I'm not used to people. See, I'm out of that cultural bubble completely. I mean, completely. I mean, there's a lot of alpha males in Russia. That's an alpha male country. Okay. I mean, it's almost impregnable. You can't really change it. I mean, they went through every single political system under God, and they still are the same.
Well, but that's the interesting thing, because the one aspect of the Soviet Union that is kind of interesting, it was never, they never embraced anything kind of effete and effeminate. I mean, you'd have to say the Soviet system, I mean, we're talking in general terms, very roughly, it was very manly. It was a very masculine culture. I mean, it was all about work, and the men would be striving forward, of course, accompanied by women, but it was all about basically men, big biceps, ready to pick up the jackhammer and start working, or space program, going off somewhere in Siberia to drill for oil. It was a very manly ethos. So it would be very hard really to overcome that. I mean, it never embraced anything kind of effeminacy or anything like that.
If the Soviet poster art is very interesting, I find it quite fascinating. But the number of women with their arms, during the war, women can do it too, and so the biceps. There was nothing shameful about that. It was, yeah, we're strong too. See, what the West has done is they've broken for being effeminate, and what the further east you go, you break to being more masculine. Okay. Yeah. And unfortunately, people in the West don't even think that masculinity should exist at all, which again is another thing I can't comprehend.
Right. No, I think it's, and what's interesting, I think, if you ever saw the movie by Dushan Makaveyev, it was made in the early 1970s, WR, The Mysteries of the Organism. Remember that film? It was Dushan Makaveyev was a big thing. I was in the heyday of Yugoslav cinema, and he kind of tapped into that. He kind of, it was a bit surreal that there was something about Stalinism that was just very, very masculine. I mean, in comparison with that, almost any other version of communism was really somewhat effete. I mean, it's like, so, I mean, obviously it wasn't a defense of Stalinism, but it was a sort of, well, there was actually, hey, this was actually pretty cool. I mean, it was very, very masculine. I mean, so if you're a man, you kind of thrived in this kind of very manly atmosphere created under Stalin.
When Clement Attlee won the general election, when Churchill was in Potsdam, and they had to make the change, and so and Stalin heard about it and thought, "Whoa, well, you're leaving, huh?" Okay, and Stalin apparently, Churchill apparently said to Stalin, he said, "Clement Attlee, there's a lot less there than meets the eye."
Yeah, I think so.
Because I mean, he was that kind of prototype, the old labor. Clement Attlee, a guy that never worked a day of his life, but it was a labor. There was so many, that generation.
That's right. Yeah.
Edmund Wilson was. Wilson was exactly the same way. I mean, he even admitted it. I've never worked a day of my life.
Exactly. Exactly. You were. Wilson. He was an academic, and then he became a kind of he was a bureaucrat. So basically, that's it. You were just a bureaucrat. Not somebody who's in you pick up a jackhammer and start working. So I mean, but it's interesting that the Chinese are kind of reviving that now by saying we don't want girly men. It's a strange thing, but at the same time, it's not insignificant for that they should start this cultural thing, because I mean, obviously they think that there's a danger of this, that they might start catching the sort of the American Western disease of girly men, and ultimately I think their fate, their economic success, their economic model might be jeopardized if we suddenly created generations of girly men.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no wonder too that part of their internet Great Wall. No pornography is allowed at all. Right. Okay, right. I mean, if you want to get yourself in a relationship, you better be a real one and not online.
Right. That's right. Right. So yeah, that's right. So was yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's a something Joe Cool asks. I don't know what this means. Where is Victor Olevich? Do you know?
Yeah, he's close friends with Dmitry Babich, our very good close friend. I will be talking with George and Dmitry
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Victor has a number of media gigs, from what I can tell, on Russian language television. He's come out quite liberal apparently over the last 2 years, but I haven't had any contact with him. I think it was when Robert Fisk died, he dropped me a message, a loss of a great writer, but that was about it. So he hasn't been on my radar for a while, but I hear he's doing well in Russian language media.
I see. Okay. Yeah. He used to be on Crosstalk.
But many times. Yeah, many times.
Okay. Huh. All right. As a Reckless Abandon says, there are still lots of female politicians in Russia, although one left for the Cape Verde Islands. I think there are.
What kind of politicians?
Female politicians.
Oh, I like female.
Female, yeah, female. Although one left for the Cape Verde Islands. Does somebody? I don't know. I mean, I think
talking about the former Ukrainian general prosecutor that became. She switched sides in Crimea, and she was made ambassador to those islands, and the Ukrainians said, "There's no place for you to hide." Quite attractive young woman. Okay. Is that who is that?
I don't know. It doesn't explain. So that's that's what I was wondering.
Oh, she became a member of parliament, and I mean, she was quite the celebrity for a while.
Yeah. No, that's right. And then somebody saying about at least Maria Butina gets on Soloviev sometimes. Yeah, no, that's right. I don't know what exactly is Maria Butina doing. I mean, I know she goes on Soloviev. I mean, does she hold some kind of any sort of position in Russia?
Well, I mean, you mean the woman that was?
Yeah, Maria Butina, the one who was arrested in the US.
I mean, last I heard, but this is a while back. I mean, she had some kind of at least temporary gig at RT, but in English. I'm sorry, in Russian.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone understands. RT has an entire Russia universe as well. Okay.
Right.
So they're developing. There's a real big push for online things, but there's a lot of stress with Russian language at this point in time.
Right. But I mean, I guess it's kind of interesting, really. What would she do now? Because I mean, she could still, of course, travel. No, she could still travel in Europe. I mean, I think that's the right. I mean, of course, the United States, that's closed off for her. But
yeah, her greatest crime is that she loved America and she liked guns, and she went through a life-changing experience because of those two. And she was an attractive woman, so there was slut shaming involved.
There was
by liberals.
Exactly, by liberals. What was so funny about all of that is that she kind of embraced this gun culture in the United States when Russians don't particularly like it. I think she wanted to introduce the gun culture to Russia, but Russia doesn't really want it. So it was very interesting. I mean, she went to the NRA and she wanted to bring the NRA to Russia, but there were just no takers. I mean, nobody wants people to go around with guns in their holsters.
If you want to be a gun owner, and it's almost always related to hunting, you have to go through a yearly physical, a psychology, a psych test, a lot of paperwork. They don't make it easy, but they don't make it impossible. But it's very much focused on hunting. My boss, for example, is an avid hunter, and he showed me the documents that he has to go through. He takes it very, very seriously.
Right. Well, to be honest, I mean, so do Americans. I mean, Americans who are serious gun owners, I mean, they take it very seriously as well. But the odd aspects of it was that it just isn't a part of the Russian culture. I mean, it's not like, Russians, want to own guns. And I think that it was kind of odd that she kind of seized on this issue. I mean, that was her issue, of guns and all these photographs that she posed for. And I don't know how many of these photographs you've seen when she's holding two guns and everything. And so the whole thing was very strange.
Not very Russian. not
Yeah.
Russian.
Yeah. But I think that they needed to get a Russian. That was a problem with Russiagate, and so they just nailed her, even though she had no connection to anything. And it was I mean, the whole thing was, of course, outrageous because how was she supposed to know what the law is in the United States about the Foreign Agent Registration Act? That she was acting as a foreign agent. She didn't know. I mean, she's just a visitor in the United States. She didn't know that. Okay, well, this she was talking with some guy, and some guy in Russia was giving her advice. You're acting as a foreign agent, and that which is what they got her on.
I mean, she was communicating with an individual citizen that wasn't representing anything political that I could, particularly in relation to guns. Okay, he was a gun advocate as well. Okay, but it had nothing to do with policy, interstate policy. I mean, it's just shameful how they destroyed a young woman's life like that, or at least destroyed it at that point in time.
But she went to prison. I mean, look, prison is no fun. I mean, how long was she in prison? Was it 18 months, 2 years? It was look, American prisons are no fun. I mean, so I think it was a considerable hardship on her. So anyway, we've got another question in a super chat from our friend Spectre in the Air. And it says, I have a question. What are your thoughts about Russia-China relations? Has the stupid US foreign policy elites driven Russia and China together? What do you think, Peter?
Well, obviously, okay. I mean, when the US is on a very regular basis, grossly criticizing them for things that are immaterial a great deal of the time. And Russia, the thing is that there's so many people say, but Russia will be the junior partner and it'll be dominated by China. That's not the point of it here. What they've done is, and this is time immemorial with geopolitics, is that your enemies. If you're both being demonized by the same enemy, you actually have something in common. They are neighbors. The up and coming geoeconomic center of the world is the Asian landmass. When we look at demographics, we look at potential economic growth, trade, a relatively young population, particularly when you get into the stands, you have a very young population, very dynamic one, a lot of reforms necessary, obviously. But there's people always say, they're a strategic alliance. They don't have a strategic alliance. Under the laws of both countries, they cannot join military alliances. They'd have to change their laws. And even the Chinese have said, well, what do you think about it? I said, no, Russia, it cherishes its sovereignty. It's not going to get itself involved in wars for another country. It's not going to do it. There's no discussion, none, zero. Let's stop talking about it. Okay.
Right. No, I think that's right. I mean, I think that had the United States and the West pursued a more intelligent policy, then they could have at least, Russia and China, I think, would have at least kept their distance. I mean, they would, they wouldn't have been enemies, but at least, Russia would have been able to, sometimes side with the West, sometimes with China, and so on. It would have given the West much greater leverage. The problem is now Russia and China both feel threatened by the West, and it has drawn them together. So they have forged this, and effectively. I mean, it's a de facto alliance. It's not a military alliance, obviously, but it's a kind of a de facto. They support each other. And again, there was no need for this. There was always, they could always have had, you could have had Russia and then China, and then, sometimes, Russia would be on West side, sometimes on China's side. But now that's just out of the question. So when Putin is asked about these things, well, aren't you afraid of China? Don't you think, that, you'll be a junior partner to China? He says, well, China doesn't threaten us. We don't worry about threats from the East. We do worry about threats from the West. I mean, and that's the point. We do worry about what goes on our Western frontiers. We have no problems in the Eastern frontier. So therefore, and so that's was the situation created by the West, by the fact that they pushed ahead for this NATO expansion. There was no need for it, by scooping up every country in Europe into an anti-Russian alliance. Now you have created these two giant powers that, I mean, they're as close as any two superpowers can be.
And they're as close as two superpowers can be based on national security interests,
right.
not ideology, no affinities.
No.
But the Russians' attitude is what they do in China is their business. Okay, what we do here is our business, and there's no conversation about it. You do what you do, we do what we do. Okay. Yeah. However, we do have common cause, and particularly since intellectual midgets like Stoltenberg, saying it's one geopolitical security mask that's threatening us. Fine, you got what you wanted. Okay, you buffoon.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, exactly. no pretense to, triangulate and, Bismarck it, Kissinger-ized it, they're never trying.
That's right. That's exactly it. And they continue along that same path. Aggressive Russia, we have to stand up to aggressive Russia and a newly assertive China. They keep talking with these buzzwords, newly assertive China and an aggressive Russia. And then they're surprised that they've created this bloc, a bloc that it didn't even exist during the Cold War. I mean, it's like during the Cold War,
they almost went to war.
Yeah, exactly. So this brilliant policy. I guess now they're thinking in terms of, maybe we can do something about that. We can sort of prize Russia away from China and so on. It isn't going to happen. I mean, that train left the station a long time ago. But it's interesting also what you said about this business of Russia being a junior partner. Russia's not a junior partner. I mean, the Chinese economy is, of course, much bigger than the Russian economy, but China is a much bigger country than Russia.
Nation-wise.
But Russia, I mean, the population, exactly, the population is much bigger. But Russia has especially has the strategic weapons as a strategic power, strategic nuclear power. It's the equal of the United States, which China isn't. But Russia also has the diplomatic experience and the diplomatic finesse. It's Russia that takes the diplomatic lead. It's not China. China kind of follows Russia, but it is Russia. So it's not, China does this and then Russia falls into line. So it's so bizarre. People keep saying that, Russia is the junior partner. What's the evidence of that? Where's the issue where Russia is doing China's bidding?
There's no evidence that it's a junior partner. Full stop. However, the West is demanding, you can come to our side, but you'll be a junior partner. Okay. Right. I mean, there's no self-reflection that making this claim that Russia is a junior partner to China, but claiming that they must completely disarm, deny their own sovereignty, deny the cultural wishes of their population, and they must just be like us. I mean, what kind of partnership is that? Because it's always been our way or the highway. There's been no real negotiation whatsoever. Okay? And it will doom the West. Mark my words. Okay, they'll be Europe will become irrelevant, and it's doing it on steroids. Okay.
Yeah,
you don't want to talk. We don't need to talk.
I agree, because really, what always made a lot of sense for Europe would have been a strategic partnership with Russia. I mean, that was always something that was kind of an American nightmare during the last year or so of the Cold War, with when Gorbachev was sort of, the whole system was unraveling. That, hey, what's going to happen? Well, the Europeans and the Russians are going to get together, and we Americans are just going to be excluded from this bloc. I mean, it was a nightmare. That's what they, when Wolfowitz wrote his famous document about full spectrum dominance, that was the nightmare. Basically, why wouldn't Russia and Europe get together? I mean, this has been a kind of a dream. Napoleon, the people within Wilhelm in Germany, even Hitler at various points kind of fantasized about that. It's like, it's the most sensible thing that you could do. You can have the industrial know-how of Europe, particularly of Germany, plus the vast natural resources of Russia. It's an unbeatable partnership. It was an American nightmare, and it never happened. And now Europe is kind of insignificant. I mean, it basically just does the bidding of the United States. So it was an opportunity that came and went.
And how does that add to Europe's national security,
No,
George?
not at all.
Doesn't.
Right.
This is such simple stuff.
Right.
But yeah. No, we have these. It's this. What is it? You have to believe in the. We said it yesterday. The value of NATO and stuff like that. I mean, absolutely ridiculous rhetoric. Okay, absolutely ridiculous.
That's right. So reckless abandon echoes what we were saying, which is, but the Anglo-American Empire always wanted to break Russia up and take its resources. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it was always, they were kind of drooling in the last year or so of the Cold War. Hey, we're just going to move in, start instigating all these endless.
Well, they
conflicts.
did.
Yeah, that's it.
They
yeah,
did.
That's it. Yeah, and then Russia will be embroiled permanently in all these interethnic conflicts, and in the meantime, we just grab all of the country's natural resources. That was the plan. That was
Chechnya.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, boom, you just play them all off against each other, with George Soros coming in, sponsoring this particular linguistic group, that linguistic group, and then it'll be forever. Russia will be in this conflict. Our friend, the Spectre in the Air, being very, very generous today, says the US elites are vastly incompetent and the US biggest problem. I think that's right. They are indeed vastly incompetent.
It's like the head of Homeland Security. There's no crisis at the border. I mean, come on. I mean, the border is secure. The border is secure. Right. I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. Okay, right. I mean, so many of these other things here. People that voted for Youngkin, they're all racist. I mean, these statements that just absolutely asinine.
Asinine, yeah.
The biggest problem for America is white supremacy. I mean, come on. Maybe you could have said that in the 1920s or 1870s in the South.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's their passport. That's their passport to financial success. And that's really a tragedy that America's now got this a class of people who are making a lot of money from fueling racial antagonism. I mean, it was Al Sharpton I guess Jesse Jackson kind of blazed the trail in doing that, but there were actually more positive aspects to Jackson. But yeah. Al Sharpton was entirely essentially a race hustler. I mean, that was his bread and butter. How do I make myself rich? Essentially, I threaten, I blackmail, I'm screaming all the time about white racism, and then they pay me off. I just make a lot of money. And so
Johnny Cochran,
yeah, that's right. And now you have all these TV personalities like Joyanne Reid, makes an enormous amount of money. I mean, here's a person whose whole shtick is white racism, and she's making millions every a year, vastly more than what 99.9% of whites in America. They couldn't even dream of making the kind of money she makes. But white racism, and then she brings on that other guy, Michael Eric Dyson, who's a professor somewhere. I don't know what, professor of race and class or whatever at some university. And then they start ranting and raving about this lieutenant governor. So there they are. They're both living off the fat of the land, very, very rich, very successful, and they're the victims. They're the victims of racism. It's like, oh God, and they're condemning poor people, 100 times, if not more, poorer than they are. But they're the victims of these awful people. I mean, Obama, of course, and Michelle kind of blazed the trail in that. But those were sort of people.
Those people only have power and influence because of white, rich liberals. That is the biggest problem. These people, you could take their steam away like that, okay? Right. It's white, rich liberals that just, it's their calling. It's like, you know, they missed the civil rights movement. They missed the anti-war Vietnam. No, we got this, okay? And it has no material impact on them at all. It is like watching theater every single night because it doesn't impact them at all. They just stir it up, stir it. The biggest detriment to people of color in America are white, rich liberals.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's what I think we're talking about the other day about Robert Woodson. Was saying, you know, we get it. Yeah, we get it both ways from the white man. First, we had the sort of the white racist with the Jim Crow. Now we have the white liberal with his guilt. I mean, you know, under both regimes, you know, blacks suffer the most. So, and then we have another super chat from David Niskanen. Thank you very much, David. And he says, thank you, Peter and George, for all that you do. Watch your videos every day and really enjoy the insight and point of view. Thank you so much, David. And that's really appreciated. And we enjoy doing what we do. And so that's
hey, it's Friday night for me. Okay. I'm Saturday night. Okay?
Saturday night, exactly. Saturday
I got a commitment to this. Okay.
And so we get reckless abandon. If I can understand this as so it depends on how much Biden screws up, but I doubt any US president could ally with Russia. All the Democrats have been turned into Russophobes due to the Russiagate Mein Kampf big lie. I think that's right. I think that's why, again, as we were saying, that train has left the station about America and Russia getting together. But after all the years of anti-Russian propaganda, it just cuts no ice. I mean, Russia, you know, they'll talk to whomever will talk to them, but the notion that they're going to join some sort of an alliance with the West, you know, that, you know, some president says, hey, you know, why don't you join us? You know, it's just ridiculous.
It's the sad thing about that is that the hatred and animosity only goes in one direction. Yes. I mean, most Russians don't have a negative attitude towards the United States. Right. They may have a negative attitude about certain things it does, but right. as a whole, as an idea, as a place, right. at the worst, it's neutral. And then there are quite a lot of other people that still are attracted to the cultural elements of it, which, you know, I don't like, but, you know, it is attractive to them. You know, that's what's really sad. I mean, what I have said in the entire time that I've lived here, it's over 20 years now, is that I always believe we should be friends. It's very difficult to be friends, but we should never be enemies. Okay, I can take anything except for being enemies. Having the cold shoulder, fine. Okay, not being friendly, fine. Being enemies is unacceptable because it's not necessary.
Yeah, no, that's right, and that's why, you know, when during the Russiagate years, when you had these clowns like Joe Scarborough coming on and saying, Russia's attack is on the level of Pearl Harbor and 9/11, this absolute nonsense, because, you know, you're now whipping up this hysteria about Russia. I mean, leave aside the fact that you don't have any evidence for any of this. But if you start throwing that around, 9/11, Pearl Harbor, and then you say that they stole an election, well, where does that lead? I mean, that's serious stuff. I mean, you know, you lead with such hatred, and when you've now accused them of that, they're going to, you know, it's could well end in war. They probably don't intend it. They don't really think it's going to lead to war. But that's the point about irresponsibility. When you're irresponsible, it's like if you're driving while you're drunk. Wait, you don't actually intend to kill anyone, so you don't actually intend to start a war. But that's how wars start. And you start throwing all these accusations around, and then start playing all sorts of games in the Black Sea or the Baltic, things could get out of control. I mean, I think that, I mean, when Stephen Cohen, I think in the last book that he wrote before he died, I mean, he was saying, look, for the first time in my life, I actually think there is a possibility of war between the United States and Russia.
Yeah, he said that on my program, and I called him out on it, and he said, no, Peter, I really do believe that. I remember it very, very clearly. Right. When John Mearsheimer was on with me, one of my favorite episodes here. Right. But, you know, this rhetoric, see, this is what, you know, words do have impact. Yep. You know, these words, these accusations, these are bells you can't unring, folks. Yep. How can you make accusations at this level and then say, oh, well, we can sit down and talk? You can't do it. You've voided that possibility. And it's only one side that has voided it.
That's right. That's it. Exactly. Exactly. Because again, Americans often project and then say, "Oh, there's this hostility from Putin. Putin, regards America as his deadly enemy." But no, there's no evidence for that. No, never once does Putin or Lavrov ever talk about America anything remotely in the terms in which the Americans talk about Russia.
There's never been a Khrushchev moment. We will bury you. Never.
No, I mean, all they do, in fact, is always they have very, very specific grievances, and they repeat that. We know those grievances. They make no secret. I mean, walking out from the ABM treaty, the broken promises to Gorbachev, walking away from the INF treaty. They have specific grievances, and then you have to address that. I mean, if you don't,
Putin saved Obama with Syria,
right? Yeah, and that's
what was the return favor? Ukraine.
Right. That's it. So that they have very specific grievances as to why what it is that they think that the West has done to them. But they never talk about, that somehow America is our deadly enemy and we need to mobilize, that they have launched a 9/11 style attack or whatever, or a Barbarossa attack on us. I mean, they would never use anything like that. So you've got these people, and people, again, Biden, Jake Sullivan, these people who were involved in Russiagate. Then they turn around and say, well, hey, why don't we sort of sit down and, negotiate with the Russians? And the Russians will negotiate, but, they're not going to regard you as, hey, well, we'll sort of distance ourselves from China and we'll make nice with you.
Let's give a real world example that I think probably played out. George and I weren't in the room, so we can't say with certainty. However, I think logic would dictate when Victoria Nuland was here a few weeks ago, and they're trying to start a dialogue, and I'm sure the Russians said, well, okay, before we start talking, can we have our compounds back that you legally took from us with no reason, confirmed evidence that we did anything wrong, and our consulate, and then you rifled through our compounds against international law. Can we start there? No.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, something real world, like we have these compounds during the worst times of the Cold War. You never touched them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's something that they feel very strongly about. They brought this up many, many times, and they were disappointed in Trump. They thought Trump, things would be different under Trump. They thought at the very least he would go back on what Obama did. It was Obama who seized that the compound. Trump didn't, and I think that was the product of the weakening of the Trump presidency, and and maybe Trump's lack of imagination. But it didn't happen. I think it was a great disappointment. But again, they think, hey, you want to start anew? You want to start working with us? Yeah. How about giving back those compounds? I mean, it's our property, and they're just getting nowhere. So. They keep coming along with this. Oh, we'll have another meeting, and then what was it? Recently, this William Burns, the new CIA guy, was a former ambassador. He says, "Well, here's a list of Russians that we think are involved in hacking. Please arrest them, would you? Thank you very much." I mean, just you give them a list. Please arrest them and be quick about it.
If I was representing the Russian Federation at such a meeting, I would give a list of about 500 people that are being held without trial in the Washington, D.C. area. Release them first, then we can talk.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and there was an article in the New York Times, talking precisely about this. There's somehow, the Americans really want to see whether Putin is serious about seeking an improvement in relations with the United States. The first thing Putin can do to show that he's serious is arrest the people that William Burns says that they're supposed to arrest. Apparently, you just give somebody a list and say, Ivan Popov is guilty of hacking, and please arrest him, would you? I mean,
they always, there's no rule of law. There's no justice system in Russia. But then when you say you just unilaterally an outside force says arrest your own citizens, okay, on our word, can trust us. Okay. I mean, it's just a mockery of it all. I mean, of course they can't do that because what is the evidence that these people have done it? I'm not saying hacking doesn't originate in Russia. I'm not saying that because I can't say it. Okay?
Who knows?
But I can say with complete confidence that hacking happens all over the world. Okay.
Exactly. You know, and I, to be honest, I have absolutely no idea how they can determine that the hacking took place in the geographic location of Russia. Given how easy it is to fabricate these kinds of things, I don't know that they can do this. But the whole idea that they have this list of people and the Russians are just supposed to fall into line. That was at the time of when Mahler. Remember Mahler kind of issued this indictment, and what's her face, Megyn Kelly, I think she came to Moscow to interview Putin, and she came to ceremonially gave Putin, here's the indictment, what are you going to do about it? And then Putin just put it down on the table. Nothing. It's not up to me. You want to make a formal extradition request, you go down to the district attorney's office or whatever, and then you can make it here. What's it got to do with me? So I think Megyn Kelly thought that she was going to do something really clever. Here, my bill of attainder, deal with it. So, well, nothing to do with me.
Yeah. But see, this is this air. They're not even aware of their own arrogance. Okay. Right. I mean, and then how do you think people, when they're treated that way, it's not just the Russians that are treated that way. A good part of the world is treated that way every single day. Okay. Right. Yeah. And as America's power, relative power shrinks, more and more people. I mean, look how like the French reacted to the submarine deal. It's just like, are you serious, people? Right. We're allies, for goodness sake. Okay, right. And that's how you treat us. That's how you treat everyone, because it's this arrogance of power.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very good example. And that's France. That's supposed to be America's oldest ally. This is how you deal with them. And again, you're practicing deceit in their case. They kind of lie to them, and then they kind of decide, well, we're going to paper over it and say, well, Biden didn't know this, Biden didn't know that, and so
does that make things any better?
That's a good point.
I think it makes things worse.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, I mean, exactly. But that's the thing. I mean, it's they do this thing, the arrogance, and say, well, here we've got our this we're the system of values, and we're naturally superior to others, and then that's a kind of the closed sort of mentality in which they inhabit.
Well, why doesn't the Russians say, we want to make a referral to the United States, United Nations Security Council. We need an international investigation of the murder of Ashley Babbitt. Okay, because the U.S. justice system refused to act on the rights of a citizen that was executed in their own capital. Because of the negligence and arrogance of the U.S. justice system, it should be brought to a higher court. It should be brought to the United Nations and make the world aware of it. And then the Russians can say, I want a list of the people of the police officers who was in the Capitol. Okay, Get it done quick.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. And that's really the problem, that the Russians don't do this. I mean, I think the Russians should do this. I mean, they always threaten that they're going to do it, and they kind of occasionally mumble. Zaharova kind of makes this point occasionally at her press briefings, but they should do this seriously. I mean, I said, yeah, you bring up Navalny, we're going to bring up what happened to Ashley Babbitt. I mean, you keep talking about Navalny as if somehow you have a right to talk to us about a Russian citizen who has been, involved in the Russian judicial system. You have no claim at all on Navalny. He's not an American. The crimes that he committed or alleged to have committed or whatever were not in the United States, or was always in Russia. Where do you get off talking incessantly about Navalny? And you feel you have a right to talk about Navalny. Well, if you talk about Navalny, we will talk about Ashley Babbitt, and they should do it seriously, as you say. You bring it up at the United Nations, or bring it up in any international forum about Ashley Babbitt. They should bring up Julian Assange before any international forum. Don't just say you're going to do it, do it. But I think Russians just feel so uncomfortable about intruding into other countries' domestic affairs that they just don't, they're not able, that their heart isn't really in it. But I think it should be.
Oh, I would welcome it. Okay, I think it would give a smidgen of self-awareness. It's like, oh, I can see that I can see your point there. Okay, right. Yeah. I mean, what do they have to lose?
I know it's none. I mean, the fact that the Western powers feel that they have a right constantly to bring up Navalny would show that, look, I mean, if you feel you're going to have a right to talk about Navalny, then we have a right to talk about Ashley Babbitt. We want to know what happened to Ashley Babbitt. I mean, why was this young woman who was protesting, this young woman who served her country in the country's uniform, she was, put herself in harm's way on behalf of her country. Why was she shot dead in cold blood? I mean, we want to know. The rest of the world wants to know, who we're dealing with when we deal with the United States. So, I mean, I think it's absolutely something that they should do, and it's something that would hurt America. That would hurt its self-esteem.
What we should strive for is to pursue what is right. I don't care if the U.S. is embarrassed by it. Okay, I want, if they want to talk about universal human rights around the world, then they should talk about, or at least admit that rights of American citizens are being violated. I don't know the number, George, about 500 plus people, solitary confinement. There's ample evidence by credible people that beatings, torture, lack of proper legal representation. Yeah. We can go on and on and on about this. So stop talking about your vision for universal human rights. Why don't you start at home first? Yeah, I just have no time for this type of thing. Okay.
That's exactly right, and I think that's why Russia needs to just make this as a regular thing. I mean, don't just bring it up as if you're trying to make a clever argument. Make it as if, yeah, well, this is something we really care about. That and this is something that we need addressed immediately. And that next time when we meet a U.S. official, we will be bringing this up. That's it. So, and I think with Zaharov, I always feel like, she's just making a clever argument. It's not, she doesn't really believe in it. No, when we meet Anthony Blinken, we're going to present him with a document, about, this is what we have found about Ashley Babbitt and the people, the January 6th defendants, and we want them addressed. We have serious concerns about it.
If you don't want to address it, maybe you'll lose a compound. Happens.
Yeah. That's it.
Happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's absolutely essential, because if you are going to talk about human rights, the universality of human rights, you're going to talk about values. Thank God, these are damn values. Why are you torturing these people? As you said, there's ample evidence. There's beatings going on. I mean, we know about solitary confinement, which the United Nations regards as torture. We want to know, these people haven't been convicted of anything. Why are they being treated in this way? You talk about Navalny. Navalny has actually been convicted of something, and he's not being tortured. No one's beating him. So
he's gossiping at the water cooler in between old Soviet films. That's, I guess, one definition of torture. Okay.
Exactly. Hey, those people. I mean, we had that guy on Tucker Carlson the other night. The way he was describing, boy, they don't get to watch Soviet films, and they don't get to hang out by the water cooler or by the microwave. So it's a very, very different treatment.
And this is how some veterans are treated. People that risk their lives.
That's right.
And this is how they're treated. It's truly extraordinary. Okay,
it really is.
Going after some of the most patriotic people in the United States possesses. Okay,
no, that's a very good point. These are veterans. Many of them are veterans. They've served their country in uniform, and the people who are torturing them, the people who are, these judges who humiliate them and refuse to address any of their concerns, they haven't served their country in uniform. So another point Russia could make, we feel very strongly about our veterans, people who serve their country in uniform, volunteer. No, this isn't just, oh, well, you were conscripted to do it. They volunteered to serve their country in uniform, and this is the way they get treated. So absolutely, this should be brought up.
Well, it should be something that we're all concerned about. Okay, don't let these lying scumbags on liberal cable. I really feels very strongly about it. You know, this dismissing these people the way they do. They don't even, these people that do it have never met people like that. Okay, they don't even know who they're talking about.
That's right.
Okay, they're in their own little bubble. The limousine liberals. Okay, these people have no idea who they're talking about, and it's really you really go across the line when you question someone's patriotism. That really gets me. Okay, that you really shouldn't go there. Okay, because it can be applied. It can be turned around against you too. Okay, people that served in dangerous military theaters, you know, and risked their lives, lost their friends, maybe a limb, and then you come back and your own government tells you that you're not a patriot, you're actually an insurrectionist. That is a real dangerous area to go to. And the thing is too, is that because we're talking about such a large number of people, it's going to spread. You can try to control it all you want, but these people will be word of mouth and it'll become lore. Okay, they're playing with fire. They're playing with fire. You don't go after these people.
Correct. Exactly.
Having said that, people that broke the law that can be proven to be, I have no problem with prosecuting them. Okay, but don't turn it into a political persecution.
Exactly. But then again, if they broke the law, then it has to be proportionate. The punishment has to be proportionate, and it has to be consistent with how such crimes are dealt with. So trespass. Well, how are trespassers normally dealt with? What punishment do trespassers normally get? Yeah, that's it. So so what they're doing here is saying, oh, this is so beyond anything. This is unique. I mean, well, how's it unique? I mean, there's been plenty of people who've broken into the Capitol protesting against this or that. I mean, it's a regular thing.
So those Cuban terrorists, how many Congress people?
That was Puerto Rico, they were shot. Yeah, Puerto Rico, they were shot. Yeah, that was number. I know 5 or 6 Congress people were actually shot. So no one was shot here. Exactly. Yeah, but that's it. So you just keep inventing all of this. And what's shocking is that, if it was just people like AOC blathering on, okay, well, that's AOC. But you have the judges. These are judges who are presiding in the courtrooms where these people are defendants. They talk like this. And that's
and they're talking like the prosecutor.
Exactly.
Again.
And in fact, they're berating the prosecutors for being too lenient. So these are the worst hacks. Imagine that's a judge who's kind of, can you imagine, this is like some Soviet judge, some half crazy Soviet judge just screaming at defendants because, he's just been told that these are wreckers and Trotskyists and Buharinites and whatever. He's just screaming at them. That's the level of these, quote, judges, unquote. They say, well, this judge is an Obama appointee. It doesn't surprise me. It's like, where the hell did you find this judge and then you've appointed this person onto the federal court? I mean, it's quite shocking. I mean, you just pick someone up and just dump him on the federal court.
It's just one of the themes of our podcast is that ideology is trumping the law. It's trumping due process.
Yep.
Okay, this is, there's nothing good that's going to come from this because for the most part, and I think I can say this with assurance, the people that they're prosecuting, they're probably some of the most law-abiding people you could ever come across.
Yeah, exactly. Not one of these people has a criminal record. I mean, it's they always this person doesn't have a criminal record. No, none of these people have, and this is how they get treated. And that's the story is that every night they sing the Star-Spangled Banner and everything. I'm sure that's true. I think, it's like, what do they have left? They still cling to some idea that, America, this is a country that they love, a country they serve. Still can't believe that this is the way they're treated.
I can't either. Yeah. I can't either. Yeah. Again, it's one of those typical things. If George and I had written this script 2 years ago and given it to Hollywood, they'd say it's nuts. You wouldn't do that to veterans. No, okay.
That's nuts. Yeah, I agree. All right, Peter. I think we've covered the landscape fairly thoroughly. Do you have any last minute thoughts? Any advice or
I'm
suggestions?
very much looking forward to seeing you and Dima tomorrow on Crosstalk.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
Again, to talk about how the secret sauce is made. Dima and George collectively proposed 2 topics, which I agreed to, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. Very much in vein of the Gaggle, so you know what to expect. Okay. All right.
It's still fun. You know what to expect, but it's it's always good fun. All right. So thank you everybody for joining us. So this at our new time, Saturday, 12 o'clock Eastern time. And we will, of course, be back same time next Saturday. Look forward to seeing you all then. Come with all your suggestions and questions, and of course, with your financial contributions.
And
come in extremely handy.
Fauci, stay away from my dogs. Okay?
Exactly. Yes.
Or you'll regret it. Stay away from my dogs.
Exactly. So thank you all. See you next week. And remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye. All right. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.